The first thing that we need to understand is version controlling. So in the version controlling, or we also call it a software configuration management, the tool that we are going to look and we are going to understand and work around practically is Git. Before we get into Git, first of all, let's have an understanding on what is software configuration management. Okay. And even before getting into what is software configuration management, first let's understand why do we need this and where does it fit as part of an organization and where does it fit as part of the operations group or the administration group. So now, if you take any software development lifecycle, the developers are the beginners who are going to write code and get the tasks to beginning. That's what they will be writing the code, right? So let's focus only on that for a time. So when we have these group of developers who are writing code, it is not just one group who will be working on the product. There might be many group of people who are working on the same product. And the developers can be in the same region or they can be distributed across the globe. That is when you will have a person working from India, you'll have a person from working from US, or you could have a person working from UK or pretty much anywhere else. So that is when what will happen is, first thing is, when a developer is writing a code, he has to share it with his peers across the globe to make sure that whatever changes that he has done is being picked up by the other person and they are collaboratively working. What will happen at this point of time is there'll be a lot of coordination problem where you do some change and your peer is also going to do the same change on the same file, and at the end when you want to give it to the QA, which change will you give? How will you integrate both these things? So that is when there's a lot of complexity that's going to happen. The same thing now, if you are dependent on someone else's task, how will you know whether he has done it? In case if he forgot to send you a mail or notify, then you have to keep waiting until the changes is done. So that is when you have a dependency in such a way of working in the development, then we need some process to be followed. Next, let's talk about process, where in a company, you need a code. Sometimes you need to use it as part of your product and get some functionality, which could be a common code, or you could just use it as a feature without doing any development. So that is when you should be able to allow people to do the changes, and we should be able to allow people only to see the changes but not to modify anything in the code. So that way, how is that you're going to ensure all this process oriented approach and permissions? And coming back to the last and the major problem, when you are working as a developer, you are not going to write one file. For example, you are trying to use Java for doing the development. What will happen? Now you will have to write many Java files to get the actual functionality of a product. So that is how, if you look a product might contain thousands of Java files and thousands of other related files. So when a developer is trying to write a file, he will not be just writing a file in one day. Depending on the criticality of the task and how long the product is going to take, you might have to take several days and several modifications that you will be doing on the same file. Now, what will happen if you are trying to do the changes on top of changes for the same set of file? At some point of time, if you want to refer anything what you have done, it will not going to be easy for you. So what is that you're going to do? You are going to take a backup and keep tracking everything. So that is when it is not easy, where if you want to know that what is the changes that you did last week, you don't know because you're doing changes on top of that. And if you literally want to take a backup of each and everything, it will not be available. And are you going to store everything in your machine? For one file, if you modified it 100 times in 10 days, you're going to keep 100 files as a backup, so that you will know for this time this change you did and this time this file you changed. Like that you cannot keep. Now the same thing, if you have 1,000 files in your product, how is that you're going to maintain? The same thing, if you have 100 developers working on this 1,000 files 100 times, then how many backups they are going to take, right? It is not an easy to track everything. So that's when the most important thing that we need is, whenever we are working on such a kind of development activity, we need a process where that kind of process which will help us to properly track who is doing a change, when he did the change, what he's done the change, and we can store everything in a proper place where we can have a control on who should access and who should not access. So such a kind of process which a company is going to implement for the development and storing the changes is what we call it as a software configuration management. Okay, or it is also called as version controlling. Why it is, we'll talk about it a little later, but for now understand software configuration management is a process using which we will be making sure all the code that we are writing will be stored and it will be effectively tracked, so that any point of time, no matter how many users are working, we can clearly say this user modified this file in this line at this point of time. And same thing, who should access and who should not access can be clearly classified. So that's when the goal from the SEM process is to ensure teamwork, track any kind of problem that you have easily, because now when you have too many developers doing the same change, it is very difficult for us, right? As a DevOps, you're going to focus how quickly you're going to find out a problem, so that you can do it using SEM. And if you need it for auditing purpose, you can easily track on who did it, when he did, what and all they have done, and also ensure a process is followed so that who is going to do the change and who is not supposed to do the change. Okay, so all those things can be tracked very easily using software configuration management. There might be a question that might be coming to you as, okay, what you're talking is about the developer. How is that as a DevOps engineer, I am going to do all these things? I'm a developer, no, but we are going to assess the tool, whatever that we are going to use for it. We are going to define the process on how the development should be working. And coming to the other important point is, it is not only the source code or the Java code or whatever code you are using for creating the project should be stored. Pretty much now at this level of the culture in IT, everyone has to do some kind of scripting or coding or documentation which is needed for automation, right? So that is when, being a QA engineer, you should have been writing some automation scripts. By a developer, other than let's say you are a build engineer, you are trying to write some build scripts. You are a system admin, you are going to write some automation scripts for your maintenance. So like that, everyone is going to write some kind of script. May not be a program, but a script or a documentation. How is that you're going to store all those things? So pretty much any text related files that you want to store and maintain, everyone will be using software configuration management. So it is not just a developer. The SEM is going to play an important role in almost all the areas where you have automation. So that is when everyone, including developers, QA and build engineers, program managers, documentation engineers, IT engineers or administrators, everyone will be using software configuration management. So that is when it is quite important for us to come into the DevOps culture where we will be effectively managing the process and taking care of the tool.